Time for us to go live. Hooray! Welcome, everyone, to another WineShark Wednesday. It is I, your host of WineShark. Hope everybody is doing well, enjoying yourselves this lovely spring. It's become a beautiful spring here in Texas. We had a weirdly warm day yesterday. So nice and sunny today. Can't wait to be outside doing all these things. Oh, well, hello to Donna. Says she's so glad to make it this time. Well, we're glad to have you back. Said I've been moving to 6:30 due to lighting conditions. It's much nicer here in the office, I think, this time of day. I'm not fighting nearly as much of the cross sun now that the time has changed. So, it's been another fun week. Had some fun and interesting wine stories and tales to bring back. Enjoyed a wine dinner last night featuring wines from both a Napa vineyard called, I'm totally drawing a blank right now, from Montague, which is a very small production affair that the winemaker actually grew up out in Weatherford, Texas, and this was held very close to there in Glen Heights, and really cool example of small winemaking. I mean, I'm talking like 150 cases of some given products. So kind of goes back to that idea that we've been talking about in the past about we tend to get, at the grocery store level especially, or at the big box store, we get these big mass produced wines, and this is much more on that boutique kind of style. Interesting selections all the way through, kind of standard Napa stuff, some Cabs, some Chardonnays, that kind of thing. Pinot Noir out from the Sonoma coast. But really nice to be able to taste somebody's wine product that was really built at that very small level. One of the wines for the Cabernet Sauvignon had only 8 rows of grapes in Rutherford, right? So very, very small production, interestingly handcrafted wines. And so I love that. And so hello to John and hello to Dave and Mary. So yeah, but anyway, it was good times overall. But doing our shopping today, got our grocery stab going. And one of the things we've been meaning to talk about on our kind of science series that we've been going over through here, we're talking about yeasts. Yeasts and the beasts that are yeasts. So, and hello to Ms. Boswell, hello mother, from visiting from Weatherford. So we were just talking about our wine experience last night, which was really fun. So yeast, we're going to get on to the topic here. Really important part of winemaking. Right? So first things, what is a yeast? Okay, so yeasts are single-celled microorganisms from the fungus kingdom. Okay, so they are very, very important to winemaking. Why? Why would the yeast be so important to winemaking? Well, winemaking, beer making, bread making, they all stem from the same process called fermentation. So yeast is foundational in this process, converting sugars into alcohol and other chemical compounds. Without yeast, we would not have wine. Okay? This is really how critically fundamental it is in that it's not only responsible for the process of turning grape juice into wine, but it does more than just that, more than just the alcohol production and booze part. These other chemical compounds, including things like carbon dioxide, which sometimes we trap to use for carbonation, and as well as aroma compounds and many other types of things, acids, proteins, all kinds of stuff come out of the process of the yeast life cycle. So there is probably, I would say, other than the grapes themselves, there is nothing more important to winemaking than yeast. So that being said, what are some of the players and what are some of the reasons, or rather the effects and functions of various yeasts in wine? Well, the first thing to understand is that yeast is found naturally nearly everywhere. It is floating around in the air. It is lying on fruit when it's brought in from the harvest. It's all over your house. It's amazing to think about these microorganisms being present that can cause all these kinds of chemical reactions. Most of us, though, I think you think that in a kind of general way, we don't think about it too much, but most of us kind of know this at a default level. Most of us have had an experience of it where it's either going to be growing in your fridge or during the dark times when everybody was making their own sourdough starters. The first is all kinds of bacteria, but you understand that bacteria are present everywhere and eventually start to create lots of different things from the fungus family if given enough time. So yeast is exactly like that. It particularly likes sugars. And so if you leave a sugary vessel out and it has a chance to stay wet enough, you will end up finding that yeast is going to take part in eating and consuming some part of that sugar, causing fermentation. Now, of course, it's not like you're going to go put it in your mouth and go experiment with it, but understand that that's exactly how we discovered this process in the first place. We observed naturally that when left in presence of water, grain and water together, or grape juice left crushed and harvested, we found that this bubbling reaction, the CO2 reaction that happens during fermentation, was the key thing in mankind discovering, hey, something is happening here. Okay, it's not just that the grain is getting wet and is warming up. It is not just that the grape juice is, say, settling or changing in flavor, but there's something more to it. So by observation and thousands of years of practice, we've come a very long way, though, from just using naturally occurring yeast in wine. Now, wild yeast, or the so-called wild yeasts, like Calcara and Candida families of yeast, are the most present type that you'll find on the surface of grape skins when they come in from the harvest. One of the interesting side notes here is that the microfauna that grow on these grapes can vary greatly from area to area. And when I say area to area, I mean very small distances of area. Even individual blocks of grapes can have very different microbiomes and types of yeast, types and quantities of various yeast strains. So this is something that oftentimes is accredited towards the particular concept of sense of place for wine, the idea of terroir, right? When we think about terroir, it means literally the soil, but in modern viticulture, we found that soil doesn't have nearly as much effect on flavor as once was thought to. Soil is critical in achieving a good vine health. Certain types of vines and areas, both from their watershed and their particular chemical compounds, affect how the grapes grow, the grapevines themselves, but they're not necessarily transmitting flavor like we once thought. And I'm talking about these concepts have been proven in the last 15, 20 years. This isn't ancient wine knowledge. This is some real interesting and modern challenge. So even in my own teaching career, I've found that things that I was once taught have changed, which is the kind of cool concept of continued education in the first place. But natural wild yeasts were responsible for the basic concept of us learning and can have a definite effect because the different quantities of those types of yeasts give us different flavors and such, as we said. It's not just booze, it's also aroma compounds and acids and other byproducts. So changing the dials and mixes of those is like changing the spices in your food. It's going to have a different outcome, okay? And oftentimes a very unique one. Now, the only problem with these so-called wild yeasts, like Calcara and Candida, they tend to be not very hardy in the presence of alcohol. Alcohol is a waste byproduct. It is poisonous to the yeast. It kills it off. So after about 5% alcohol by volume, wild yeast is really no longer a player. Well, as most of you know, most wines average between 7 to 15% alcohol by volume, far above that threshold. So that means that we have to have other players involved. Okay, so modern commercial winemaking, you relies heavily on adding or inoculating wine with various strains, which means, by the way, variants, right? We have different strains of yeast, with specific yeasts to get specifically desired effects. I read one scholarly article that said usually at least 3 or more major types of inoculations were used during certain fermentation processes, where they would take 3 different strains of yeast in 3 different vessels, blend them all together at the end. Some of them for the basic concept of fermentation. Saccharomyces cerevisiae. This is the biggest player by far in the wine fermentation world. By the way, not just wine, but beer. Cerevisiae, there is the base word right there. The same thing when we think about the base Latin word for beer. So Saccharomyces cerevisiae is huge in getting most of the heavy lifting done. But there's several other family members in the Saccharomyces or sugar yeasts that play different roles as well. They have much higher alcohol tolerances. They can accent and even output certain byproducts that assist the aromas that you may be trying to get out of your grapes. So if, for instance, you are fermenting Pinot Noir into wine, You may want certain specific strains that help advance the flavors that are friendly to that wine. You may not go for one that say has I don't know, tree fruits like apples, or maybe stone fruits like peaches or nectarines. You may go for something that goes more towards the mushroom and cream and cherry and tobacco style flavors, which you want to help enhance out of that wine. So what types of yeast they're using on purpose or inoculated is very critical to the winemaking process. Okay. We've also talked about malolactic fermentation just a couple of weeks ago. Okay, malolactic fermentation was what they call secondary fermentation, meaning it happens after the primary alcoholic fermentation. That's largely the realm of the Enococcus eni bacteria, okay, or fungus rather. So Enococcus eni, very critical in that whole eating malic, pooping out lactic acid. We love that because it gives us that softer, less poignant, less punchy acid flavor in our wines, right? So like the Chardonnay we're going to try today probably has a little bit of malolactic on it. So it's going to give us that butter, cream, and cheese thing in white wine, and it's give us that soft, velvety thing in red wine. Last and kind of never least, and certainly not least, the most controversial of the member of the fungus group in yeast would be Brettanomyces. Brettanomyces, or Brett if you're hip and trendy, is controversial because it has a certain limited window of utility. In the beer world, Brettanomyces are something that has to be very carefully controlled because it can really run kind of rampant in the brewery because it's very difficult to get rid of. And if you don't want it, all your beers end up tasting like Brett. In wine, there's a similar problem, although we don't have necessarily the issue of trying to make it go away, but making sure you control how much Brett is in the wine. When it gets past certain detectable thresholds, it can become kind of onerous. So at the bottom end of the scale, when there's just a little hint of it, it adds this depth and earthiness. It adds a round quality that and a volume to the wine, especially to younger wines that haven't yet had a potential to age. Too much, and it starts to smell like Band-Aids, or it gets kind of what they call horsey. And they do, horse being like a horse, the animal smells like horse. And that becomes an unpleasant amount of sensation. Different people have different sensitivities to this. So in the world of wine, some wine styles are very bready, some winemakers have more Brett than others, and it's always considered one of those, well, I like this or I don't. It's a very subjective and controversial point. So the big things, you got your wild yeast, your Cochera and your Candidas. You got your sugar yeast like Saccharomyces cerevisiae. You got Enococcus eni, responsible for malolactics. You got Brett in there to make sure that you can kind of round out and get your earthy tones on. But this is just a primer on yeast, right? We're not doing a deep dive really into here, but we can do that over on Patreon if I get enough requests for talking about the flavors and influences of yeast, because it's really kind of fascinating to see how the grape affects things, yeast and fermentation affect things, aging and oaking affect things, and all the sort of things in the selections that are done during the winemaking process that can help us get to that end product that we love so much. So, now, any questions about yeast before I move on to the quiz? See, Mark says, Betty just arrived in California. Well, enjoy your visit there for Mark and Betty. I hope you guys are doing well. It is that travel time of year because Dave and Mary, who are normally up in Minnesota, are visiting us down here today. So that's kind of cool, helping us to the start of the upcoming Scarborough Renaissance Festival this weekend. So, all right, it's time for the wine quiz from our Wine Wars game here. So there are 5 categories of kind of like Trio Pursuit. We got Vine to Vino. Then we'll do Graposphere, which is about grape varieties, etc., and their geography. Then there's the Wine Cellar, which is storing, selecting, and tasting wine. Then we have Wine and Food, my personal favorite category, right? Cooking with wine, how to pair wine with food, and then Wine Service. And then last, Cork Culture, which is all about wine people, business, the arts and sciences, and general wine trivia. So, question numero uno. What does the system of Remouage and Degourmand removed from the bottle fermented sparkling wines. Okay, I'll repeat that, give you guys a chance to think on this one. What does the system of Remouage and Degourmand remove from bottle fermented sparkling wines? This is the méthode traditionnelle in French, and guess what? We just talked about it on today's show. Not those two features, but what they're removing is the lees, or the dead yeast cells. Bam, sediment or lees. Okay, see, so when you have bottle fermented, bottle conditioned wines like that, the yeast starts to die out and it falls and becomes this sludge on the bottom of the bottle. And before you go ahead and sell that, they slowly tip the bottles over so that the wine goes in contact with its cork. And then modern days, they flip it all the way over and then they freeze this. And then they take it out and it shoots out the little plug of frozen yeast cells. They top it off a little bit with some still wine, then cork it up, and you have the beautiful traditional method cava or champagne or Crémant de Bourgogne, Crémant de Loire, etc. All right, so that's one for me. Next question. What mutant white grape of Pinot Noir goes by the name of Pinot Bianco in Italy? Is it Pinot Grigio, Pinot Blanc, or Chenin Blanc? Mutant white grape of Pinot Noir. I don't know that I like that idea of calling it a mutant white grape of Pinot Noir because, well, that just assumes that the Pinot Noir was the first one. But the answer here is in the name. Pinot Noir goes by what name in Italy? It goes by Pinot Bianco in Italy. What would the rest of the world call it sometimes? We got Pinot Grigio, Pinot Blanc, or Chenin Blanc. The answer here is the Italian word for white is Bianco. The French word is Blanc. It is Pinot Blanc. Yeah. So there are three color variations of the Pinot family: black, gray, and white, respectively in French, noir, gris, and blanc. In Italy, it is Pinot Nero, Pinot Gris, or Grigio, depending on. Gris is France, Grigio is Italy, and Bianco is white in Italy. So they're the same darn things, and Pinot Blanc is awesome. You should totally try some out. Get some from All Sauce, is my personal favorite. All right, next on our Wine World one. You want to drink the mutant. I like the way it's not going to give you actual superpowers, Donna. It's not like a laser. It's not like a space laser or a radioactive spider, I'm afraid. It's really just some good, juicy, crispy white wine. That's why I don't think Pinot Noir was first. I don't think that it's a mutant. I think I've got to remember there's a specific word for the color variations, and I don't think they're called mutants. Anyway, true or false? The ISO is an organization of wine tasting glass police. I'm pretty sure the International Standards Organization does more than happen to just do wine tasting glass policing. But it says it's true. The International Organization for Standards recommends standards for official wine tasting glasses. So ISO will put a standard on damn near anything. But the idea that they're an organization of wine tasting glass police, I think, is a bit of a stretch. I would have answered no to that question as a falsehood. I think their answer is incorrect, but I'll be willing to take one on the chin for that and say I failed. Here's another true-false. This one is in our wine and food category. All right, true or false? Delicate, fruity wines, such as Beaujolais, make delicate, fruity, red wine-based sauces. True or false? Well, I'm going to go ahead and say yes, that is true. That when you get, red wines are light and fruity, you're going to make light and fruity sauces. However, red wines in cooking tend to get more concentrated, so I can see them trying to weasel their way into either version of this answer. Now they say false. Beaujolais will lose its charms with heat. Merlot is more reliable for red wine sauces. Bullshit. Sorry there, Wine Wars. You are wrong as all hell. just about any red wine can be used. And certainly, by the way, Merlot is not the go-to that I would go to for any given red wine sauce. While heat does change the bright fruit character because you lose some of these acids in the cooking process, lighter wines will produce lighter flavored food options almost exclusively across the board. So the idea that it somehow loses its luster because it's not a big red wine is frankly crap. In fact, I just read a whole article from Food and Wine magazine about the ultimate guide to cooking with wine. In their recommendations in reds, they run towards Grenache, right, and Gamay as their two big red grapes, right? Those two are the examples. By the way, Gamay is Beaujolais, or Beaujolais rather is made from Gamay. So I'm afraid I'm calling to Wine Wars on that one. All right. Let's see. Okay, we got plenty of tastes of mutants. Well, John, you can definitely enjoy all of them. There's a whole X-Men thing going on in here. All right, which 2008 innovation aided in the sampling of French wines? Was it wine tours by rail, screw-topped wine tubes, or a ban lifted on in-store wine tasting? So in 2008, did they invent wines by rail? I don't think so. Did they invent screw-topped wine tubes? Possible. Or a ban lifted on in-store wine tastings? I didn't know that there was such a ban. So I'm going to guess a series of tubes, although I could easily see it being the last one. I was correct by a good guess. Screw-topped wine tubes. Introduced in Paris by Wineside, the tubes contained classic French wines in sample-sized portions. Well, that would be kind of cool, Try a bunch of different wines in a whole test tube format. Speaking of which, for those of you that didn't catch last week, I had a great opportunity thanks to VinePair, and there was an excellent industry event on a deep dive into the wines of Chile. And they partnered with a company called Master the World, which serves up these really cool kits for your tasting purposes. And you can do both blind tastings or hosted tastings like this. So basically they send splits, which are the little 187 milliliter bottles. If I had one around here, I should save it I'll save one of them for showing off. But they're all identical bottles. So all the wines come, they look identical. They're black labeled, and they have a label that's designed to pull off. When you pull so it just says wine 1, wine 2, wine 3 on the outside. You pull the label off, and on the inside it's the full details of the wine. So it's a great way to either self-diagnose, self-test yourself with blind wine tasting, or you can do it like they did as a simple, easy delivery method for small samples of a number of different wines. So very keen on Master of the World. I know that the Guild of Sommeliers is also using it for its blind wine tasting practices that we do as guild members. So I think that's fantastic. So definitely enjoy. Definitely will be looking towards learning more and enjoying that. So not bad. We did what? We got 1, 2, 3.5 out of 5 today. So our wine wars was not so bad, even if I do think that they're wrong about how they cook with wine. They're not very good at that piece. So, all right. Let's see what else is upcoming and in the news. It's of course the grocery store grab. Yay! All right. So for those that are not familiar with the premise, the grocery store grab is our attempt to get the best value per dollar for wines featured at non-big box or non-specialty retailers. So if you don't have an opportunity to shop at a nice wine store or a big box liquor store, you may shop at the grocery store for convenience, etc. And there's usually not a lot of good help to be had there. So we focus on label-first wine reading. Unfortunately, in the world of grocery stores, you're very often going to have mass-produced wines. This isn't the place you're going to find the boutique wines that I was talking about earlier. However, you're also not going to have a lot of good help. So you really need to focus on how labels read, and we try to reward wines that do good descriptive labels thereof. Today's selection is, where's my images? Bam, here we go. No, images, there we are. The Signature Reserve from Russian River Valley Chardonnay. So, Signature Reserve, probably not a brand you've heard of, probably not a brand I've heard of. This is quite literally Safeway, aka Tom Thumb, aka Kroger, aka several other grocery stores throughout the United States. This is their own custom labeled wine. So this is truly grocery store wine, made for the grocery store by some sort of producer. So they can go out, and by the way, you can do this too. If given enough capital, you too can decide to bottle wine and sell it at the grocery store. You don't even have to own any grapes or any winemaking facilities. You just gotta lease the grapes or buy them at bulk and on the market. You can then have a bottling facility do all the fermentation, racking, aging, storing, labeling, and shipping for you. So you don't even have to get your hands dirty if you really want to get into the world of wine. Now, to be honest with you, wines that are made like this generally don't have a very high perceived value. But when you're trying to do something like the grocery store, you always notice that you'll have brand name products that are immediately beside a grocery store's very own label. Those, by the way, are very similar, and sometimes they're even the identical product, simply with the what we say is the serial numbers filed off. So I wanted to try this out. It kind of I was looking through various things, and while I do not choose wines ahead of time, I do make my considerations for my own safety and health. Speaking of which, meaning I think I'm going to have some chicken with a creamy Parmesan sauce tonight, so I picked a wine to go with it. So sometimes it's really just about me. But anyway, Signature Reserve Chardonnay. So on the front, Russian River Valley, that is where it's located from. This has happened to be vintage 2017, which means they're probably trying to get rid of a bunch of this. It's a little bit long on the tooth for a grocery store wine in 2022, but I decided to give it a risk. So this is their Russian River, Sonoma County Russian River Chardonnay. On the back, it reads, our signature reserve collection of wines are crafted from select vineyards and lots that showcase the very best of each appellation. The Russian River Valley Chardonnay opens up with aromas of ripe apple and Asian pear, followed by notes of oak spice. On the palate, the flavors of apple pie and baked pear develop into baking spice and a rich creme brulee. The wine finishes with beautifully balanced acidity, framed by toasty oak. That right there, ladies and gentlemen, is one of the best damn descriptors of a wine label that I have read in quite some time. It is direct. It doesn't use too many words in the world of wine stuff. It definitely uses expressive flavor words, and got to appreciate the fact that they are really telling you what this wine tastes like. The reason being, they're not spending time telling you about their family, their heritage, where the things grow, how the sunlight hits, how you should feel about your wine. They're actually telling you what's in the bottle. So for better or for worse, they're doing a better job than a lot of more, prestigious or elite winemakers in my opinion. Now this says, by the way, on the back of the bottle here, I'm going to hop over to Google Maps real quick. Where is Hopland, California? Because I am not familiar with Hopland. It's in Mendocino. Oh, Mendocino. So this wine, basically, on the back it says, cellared and bottled by Signature Reserve Cellars in Hopland, CA. So Hopland is in Mendocino, which is just north a little bit of the Sonoma coast area. It's one of the northernmost of the winemaking AVAs in America. In fact, let me see if I can't share my screen. Browser capture. Does that work? Does not appear to be working. You guys can't see my browser. Bummer. Oh well. So no fun for you, but Hopland, California is in Mendocino. Now you know. So that just goes to show that they've contracted with whatever winemaker. They've put themselves in a DBA and doing together to make this wine. So let's give it a go. Let's give it a taste here. So it's answered most of our basic questions. It's told us what's in the bottle. Chardonnay. It doesn't say anything else, so we have to assume that it's at least 75% Chardonnay. Could be up to 100, which wouldn't surprise me either. Where are the grapes grown? Russian River Valley, Sonoma County, California. So it's told us specifically the Russian River American Viticultural Area. What does the wine taste like? It's given us our flavor words. It's not given us any food pairings, but frankly, the more that I kind of have done this, and you guys that have been along for the whole journey, this has been a thing that I'm seeing less and less and less and less. So maybe it's just a pipe dream of me to want to see food pairings on wine. I just don't think they're willing to commit to specific food pairings because I think the marketing concept is it drives people away or it pigeonholes people. Admittedly, in my years of teaching wine and food pairing can be intimidating. And so if you're new to wine and you don't know any better and it says it goes with pasta Alfredo with chicken, and you're going to have spaghetti on that night, you might turn away and not have this wine. And that's something that I think they're trying to avoid. So I may be dropping the idea. Maybe it's just a minor personal gold star if they give food pairings. But they've done all the right work there on the labels. So bravo on that. Let's see here. So we're gonna go ahead and give this a go. This, by the way, was $20 list price, $15 after club. So this is a popular premium price point, right? It is $15 bottle of Chardonnay and should be competing at that level when we talk about how the wine tastes and flavors, right? So let us take a go. John says he's drinking a Boda box from Nighthawk Gold. Nice. It even says on the label, buttery Chardonnay. John is all about his Enococcus eni, which sounds dirty when you say it out loud. Anyway, all right, let's take a go here. Color is dead on straw gold. I mean, this thing is that deep, dark color of a hiker's urine. It is definitely saying that it is a bold white wine. On the nose, it definitely comes across. You certainly get the oak and the buttery bit really quick. You have to search a little bit for the fruit, but it is very much there. It's, again, a golden apple or baked apples are the first two things that come to mind here. Chardonnay like this from California, Russian River specifically, we oftentimes hope for a little bit of tropicality to it, maybe some grilled pineapple, papaya, that kind of thing, but this one isn't quite there in that level of complexity. So we're not quite getting that level out of it. So on the palate though, apples definitely come right up front. It has that acid pop. It retains acidity, which balancing that in with oak and malolactic is the art form, I think. Compared to some of its competitors, and I'm looking at you, Kendall Jackson, and looking at you, Buttercream, and I'm looking at John's buttery box, hammered butter, Kerrygold brand Chardonnays that have been buttered, braised, melted, browned, buttered, buttered, creamy, butter, cream. This style, especially when paired with inexpensive oaking methods, can make some very overprocessed wines. We had wine just 2 weeks ago. What was that? That was the bread and butter Chardonnay, hence the nickname. It was, over the top. This retains fruit and acidity to balance in that butter with a hint of oak. It definitely hits. Now, when they say oak spice, often think vanilla or white pepper. This is that beautiful hint of vanilla. I'm very surprised at this wine for this price point, and especially at this age. This wine is holding on really well and is an absolute do for those that like California-style buttery Chardonnays, because it's not over the top. It is hitting those balance points very, very nicely. I am duly impressed. So, answering those three questions, is it well executed? Yeah, no flaws here. I said it's got its legs on at 5 years well and doing so well. Is it on style? Absolutely. This is really hitting that center point of California Chardonnays. Whether you like that or not, that's up to you, but it is definitely on style. Is it worth the price tag? Oh, at $15? Absolutely. This is, it also says, by the way, it's 13.5 ABV, so it's right in the middle of the alcohol ground. Really doing a good job. I cannot complain. I have chosen wisely. This will go well with tonight's chicken because I have to use up the rest of the chicken that I made for chicken piccata. So now we're going to make chicken creamy something and chicken lemony something. Chicken lemon creamy, which is what chicken piccata is. All right. So coming up soon, we've got Scarborough Renaissance Festival. As of Saturday, Wines of Spain being our opening weekend. I believe tickets are sold out online, but you will still have tickets available in the new venue, and we will have 24 more tickets available, I suppose, because I think we've sold 40 and we should have those. So there is all of that going at the weekend. Then we've got, what else? We've got Totally Owe My Patreons catch-up time. I have been having some real serious challenge getting my content to a level and some serious confidence problems. But, guys, I will be catching up. I've got the bottles of wine. I need to finish up on the... and I've got the footage from the background, but I've got to finish the tasting portions, the me on cameras, and then edit and splice it all together in a way that doesn't come across where I look like an idiot. It does happen, by the way. So anyway, that's coming up here soon, and I'm trying to get ahead of myself for the fair season. So we've got Vermentino, Melon de Bourgogne, and the stuffed pork loin with apple Riesling sauce are the 3 upcoming things that I owe you guys. So I will be dutifully getting on board with those things ASAP. I promise I'll catch up, and you guys will have great things to do and fun recipes to try. So, questions from anybody in the crew? Lots of chatter about mutants and Chardonnays. Gotta love that. I'll give you guys a minute because I know there's a delay. But anyway, yeah, this is really pleasing. Signature Reserve Chardonnay. Go Safeway at hiring somebody capable to do your wine, to make your label, and to make it not suck. Because boy, that's always high risk when you do, really low contact winemaking like that. So it makes me wonder whether they've got somebody in their house who's managing their wine program, or whether they just go, we trust you. So, all right, well, if you guys don't have anything else, I'm going to take a break and find that chicken with creamy whatnot sauce with some Parmesan and whatnot. Then I'm going to go back to work because I've got some wine tasting notes to finish. I have finished all of the selections for the show for the Discover Renaissance Festival. So now I have secrets in my head, and that's kind of fun. Lots of new wine tasting stuff for those of you that have ever been to the show. It's 6 different wines every weekend, so this year is no exception. Lots of new things to try out. So hope to see you guys there, and if not, I will see you next week on WineShark Wednesday. If you guys have liked what you've seen, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button down below, get the little bell to get notified when new episodes come out. Also, if you really like what you see, and if you'd like to deep dive on some of these subjects, really like to see even more details, whether it's about the science, the flavor, and of course the cooking with and enjoying wine in your daily lives, Patreon has benefits for you for as little as $5 a month. You get access to all the content that I'm currently late on. Also, of course, just share this stuff with a wine-loving friend. I appreciate each and every one of you who view these videos, and for those of you that hop on and can chat with us, I raise a glass to you guys and hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Until next time, I've been your WineShark. Cheers.